Hello, GlobeBusters. Yes, of course they're serious. You do? You have? No kidding. Uh-huh. Oh, they'll cure your globitis this week. Thank you. We got one!
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the GlobeBusters.
What are you supposed to be, some kind of a cosmonaut?
No, we're exterminators.
And now, here's your host.
All right. So I guess what I want to do is, you guys are familiar with Mitchell from Australia, right? Jaron, I know you are. John, are you familiar with Mitchell from Australia?
I don't think so.
Okay. And Austin, are you familiar with him at all?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, cool. So Mitchell's been in the community for a while. He has tried to do, some experiments. He actually, one experiment that I really wish he would have been able to do was that the floating string experiment, the fishing wire that had a little bit of buoyancy. And for whatever reason, I can't remember the reason it didn't work, other than I think it broke long before its tension, right?
Yeah, way before its test strength.
Yeah, which is really sad because that would have been a pretty definitive test. But he's pretty innovative and he's always out there thinking and stuff. And I really like his approach to the way that he presents things. And he presents things in a way that people don't necessarily think about. He has a very...
Of course he does. He's Australian.
Yes. He presents them upside down. So anyway, that's one of the reasons I really like his stuff. And so recently he came out with this. He just premiered this, I think 2 days ago, something like that, called the #1 Flat Earth Proof. And this is this proof that he's going to detail is something that, I've talked about a few times on GlobeBusters. We talked about it the most on one of our Wednesday night shows. I think it was our very first Wednesday night show when we had the guy that did the yacht racing around Antarctica, right, join us and, kind of exposed how much BS that was. But we started talking about, navigation and using a sextant to navigate by the stars. And it came up a little bit in that, and I've mentioned it a few times. And then I think there was a guy even on Nathan Oakley's show, 10th Man, who brought this up. And, everybody is correct on it. I mean, this is one of those proofs that is absolutely irrefutable, and that is using a sextant to navigate by the stars and what is required for that. Now, if you guys are not familiar with what is required for that, if you've never, looked into that, it pretty much requires that we have to be on a flat surface, because the way that navigation by sextant is done by multiple triangulations with certain stars as reference points. And of course, they are all treated essentially as equidistant. There is no parallax figures involved whatsoever. So like if you remember Red's rhetoric and his, let's figure the distance to the moon BS, and he had to put in a 0.6 degree figure for parallax. Well, they don't do that. You don't have to do that at all, because it is point blank assumed that we are on a flat table. Now, that's not to say that they don't have an excuse and, will try and mislead you, because believe me, they will try and mislead you on how that works out. And that's just something that is in this video that I thought that Mitchell did a fantastic job pointing out. So have any of you seen this video I'm about to play yet?
I don't think I have.
Oh
Nor
God,
have
you're
I.
gonna love it. Okay, guys. Well, this one, like I said, it's about 13 minutes. And I'll stop and comment on it, or if there's any comments, just start talking and I'll stop it. But I got to tell you, the way that Mitchell did this is absolutely fabulous. I cannot praise this high enough. He's absolutely right, and this absolutely drives a stake through the heart of the globe, hands down, 1,000%. So if you don't have any other comments, let's go ahead and start this guy. Here we go.
I'm Mitchell from Australia, and this is the number one flat earth proof. The premise to this starts with the sextant, and how we use the sextant in celestial navigation. We look directly through the sextant at the horizon. But if you live on a globe, what horizon are you actually looking at, Globers? Is it the Earth horizon? The water horizon? The horizontal reference plane? The visible horizon? How about the sensible horizon? The geodal horizon? Or the celestial horizon?
I don't know about you, but I've never heard of the sensible horizon. That's even a new one for me. That's getting way up there in stupidity world. But and of course, as many of you know, obviously the problem is that we have been told all this time, by the Globers, that the reason that boats go over and are no longer able to be seen, right, is they're going over the curvature of the Earth, and that curvature is the geometric horizon, right? In other words, it is the mathematical point which the sky meets the ground. So if you are observing from 6 feet, right, then I think it's 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height. But let's just say it's sufficient to say that it's going to be about 6 feet. If you're 6 feet high, then it's going to be about 3 miles out. Okay, and theoretically, that physical horizon is supposed to be at 3 miles out. Well, obviously, that's been destroyed so many times. It's unbelievable. And so there is no geometric horizon. We know that. I mean, this right here, his other number one globe killer, the black swan, as they call it, is devastating. It absolutely kills that argument. No two ways about it. So
Yeah, I might be the only one out there because I'm so familiar with Nathan Oakley and those guys, and I've heard the term black swan used a million times. I have no idea what black swan is, so I can't be the only one, right?
You might be. Well, all right, here's the black swan.
You need to explain it to some people because Alex Stein thought it had something to do with being able to see a bird out on the water. So obviously,
that's it.
He's a little bit confused.
You know what? Austin does this very well. So how about if I let Austin describe it, and I'll run the slideshow here.
All right. So, if we live on a magic spinning sphere in a vacuum with a radius of 3,959 miles, then it has to curve at a certain rate. That's called geometry. So, what we're going to use is a logical postulation called modus tollens. If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. So if the Earth has a radius with 3959, which is P, then every horizon distance measurement must be no more than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet, which is Q. So if it's not Q, therefore not P, the Earth is not a sphere. Very simply, if the Earth has a radius of 3,959 miles, you must have a physical, tangible, geometric horizon at 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. It can be no further than that. It can be less than that. So it's like if you have a pregnant woman who runs her hand down her stomach, she can't see her hand anymore because there's a physical obstruction there. This is required if the Earth is in fact a sphere with this size. Here we go in this observation called the black swan, which is called the black swan because if you say that all swans are white and then you find one black swan, you only have to find one black swan to falsify the claim that all of them are white. So this is the globe Earth's black swan. It cannot exist or happen one single time. This is an observation 1 foot off the surface of the Earth in California, where you can see that clearly the horizon is not 1.22 miles away, but rather beyond the furthest oil rig, which is at 9.41 miles, called platform habitat. This would require the radius of the Earth be something like 264,000 miles. There is no physical, tangible obstruction at the location required for the Earth to be a sphere with that radius. This is literally an impossible observation on the globe Earth we were all indoctrinated with as children.
Wow. So the swan is just a metaphor. It has nothing to do with birds at all.
Yes.
Correct.
Can I
Yes.
steal the black swan and use it for something else, or does it have to be that?
No, you could call it whatever you want. I mean, it was originally, who made it famous, I think, is probably John Quantum Eraser. But the guy that originally took this photograph was BLMSB, which is Bo, BLMSB 69, which is Bo out in California. And, he's taken several more observations that are even clearer and better than this. But the bottom line is this one picture just completely blows it away. So the observation height where the camera is 1 foot above the water, right? And so that means that the physical geometric horizon has to be at 1.22 miles. That's physically where the sky and the Earth have to meet, by geometry. There's no way around it. And yet we can see Platform Hill House at 6.21 miles. The whole thing, none of it is refracted. We can see Platform Habitat. We can see this thing in the middle. I'm not sure what that is. Might be a boat. I don't know what it is.
It's a little boat. Yep.
Is a little boat. Okay. And then way back here, we have the apparent horizon, which of course is in fact all there is an apparent horizon, because even on a different day, this horizon may come closer or go further away depending on the clarity of the day. But the black swan does all of its damage long before it gets out to that horizon, because it should be stopped at 1.22 miles, which would be way here, way up here. And, you've got 6.21 miles, you got 9.41 miles. It is absolutely impossible for this observation to be made. It is absolutely impossible to claim refraction is magically not only raising up the horizon so that you can see beyond the 1.22 miles, but then you can also see clearly the 6.21 miles, and you can also see clearly the 9.41 miles, and you can also see clearly the maybe 10, 15, 20 miles, whatever, that the horizon actually is, right? Refraction is a magical thing, but I'm sorry, it can't do that, right? So as a result of this, John, what the Globers have done is they now deny, and in fact, they will tell you to this day, no, we've never, ever, ever said that there was a geometric horizon. We've never said that. We always said it was right, which is a blatant lie, right? It's like, it doesn't matter whether you say it or not. It's a mathematical fact, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's the whole thing about the ball, though, is the horizon is necessarily geometric. It's due to curvature. The black swan sort of precedent or whatever applies really nicely for something a little different. But, just in a nutshell, so the phase of the moon is indicative of where the moon should be in physicality in terms of globe model. And so long and short, if you see the full moon during broad daylight overhead, that's not where it should be. It should be on the opposite side of the Earth. And when I've explained this to people, I always get, well, sometimes the moon is where it should be according to the globe Earth model. And so I call black swan on that, because you only have to find it where it's not supposed to be one time ever. Because, the globe Earth model does work sometimes for the position of the moon, but other times, and more than just once, but only once is necessary, right? Black swan.
The same would go for a selenelian eclipse also.
Right. So I think we should just change the whole movement from flat Earth to black swan. We'll use that in all our memes, and we'll get a logo going, a mascot.
Well, believe me, I think, Nathan Oakley and crew have done quite a bit to make, black swan kind of a household word in flat Earth. But, like I said, and it's not their discovery or anything like that. Bo took the picture. It was actually Ben on an episode of GlobeBusters that originally presented this long time ago, and he's he presented it then as a kind of an irrefutable proof. So if anybody got credit for it, I'd have to say it was probably Ben. But I don't think that really matters, because the point is it's there. It supports the flat Earth argument in spades, and it's irrefutable. There's absolutely no way to logically or honestly argue this, right? Same thing with what we're about to do.
Look at if you look in real fast, like the cranes look very distorted, so the rest of the image must be as well. That would change a lot of your conclusions. Some do in the chat, right? The argument has nothing. This is typical of Globers, but the argument has nothing to do with the oil rigs. That's literally just a demarcation of distance. That's how you know how far away at minimum the horizon is. It's about the horizon. Refraction doesn't work for tons of reasons. For one, it's called terrestrial refraction that you're having to invoke. You're having to say that the terrain itself is moving. This actually requires you to presuppose what's in contention, which is the radius value. You then fluctuate it, 7/6R, all hypothetical, all right, which is a category error. The Earth's not breathing in and out, and that's just to explain under the assumption that you then take light rays, which is just an unrealistic construct that doesn't actually exist, according to the subject matter expert for the globe side himself, Andrew Thomas Young. Then there is no horizontal boundary. According to the ideal of refraction, there has to be a horizontal boundary anyway. So there's like a plethora of reasons that quote unquote refraction doesn't work at all. It's just a joke. And it's not about the oil rigs. It is about the fact that horizon is just an apparent location, which Flat Earth knows that. You can take a time lapse. It's just where the sky appears to meet the ground, constantly moves. On the globe Earth, it's a physical, actual place that has to be there, a tangent point on a sphere that physically blocks your view. So no, the oil rigs being somewhat distorted is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with the fact that
Exactly.
the horizon, this is a still shot from a video. Really, the 1.2 miles is way before even the still shot's taken, right? The screenshot, because you zoomed in past the 1.2 miles. You should have been blocked way before this picture was snapped, right?
Yeah.
So it's just
we have other pictures
for the Globers to grasp it.
Exactly, and we have other pictures that show these things in absolute clarity. And there's a reason, and you're going to learn something about navigation with the sextant here shortly that I found very interesting. But usually it's a rule of thumb that you do not want to select a target that is a target star that is lower than 15 degrees on the horizon. Why? Because that is the primary area between 0 and 15 degrees where you have the maximum amount of refraction. And of course, when we say refraction, there can be all kinds of things that are going on with that. There can also be, distortions like this caused by it. But the point is you can see these things in their entirety. And the biggest point is that we can see the horizon way, way, way many miles behind that. And of course, that will change from day to day. But you're right, Austin, that was the first thing that the Globers tried to do, is they tried to destroy this argument by saying, oh yeah, look at the towers and the cranes and how distorted they are. And it's
what you're seeing here is a mirage.
Yeah. And yet they will take that picture of Soundlies, right? A Pontchartrain that makes it look like the bridge goes straight up and straight down, right? On the little pass bridge. And they will claim that as actual Earth curvature. I mean, their argument is so nonsensical.
My friend Brian, incidentally, was a civil engineer, did work on the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge, and he was 100% attest. He did had all kinds of document stuff on it. It was totally flat, no curvature in that at all. That's from an engineer that worked on it, so I don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yep. Now, BMLSB69 is in the chat. Hey, Bo. And Bo says, you can't have refraction without air pressure, and you can't have air pressure without a container. Amen to that, Bo. You're absolutely right. So, yeah.
The container is gravity, Bob.
Yeah, right. That's just so crazy. All right. So anyway,
black swans matter.
Let's get back to that. But yeah, this is a great proof. And like I said, this is Bo's photograph. So we definitely owe Bo a huge debt for that, because that was beautiful. That he brought us that. And of course, the logical argument of modus tollens, he's right. It's going to leave a mark. So
I always felt so stupid asking what was black swan, because everybody knew what it was. So I just never asked. I figured I would just learn it by osmosis eventually. So I just had to ask. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't feel so stupid anymore. I feel involved and complete.
Well, that's why
awesome.
we're going through this. And that's why I had this up today, because I didn't know how many people really did know what it was. And, not everybody is living and breathing this every single day, and so that's kind of why we go out and do this and look it over and bring it to everybody, for their consideration. But I think that when you look at this one, it's irrefutable, point blank, as is this, which is also irrefutable. So let's go ahead and continue on with this. And again, as always, if you want to say something, just start talking and I'll pause the video. And here we go.
Well, it's certainly not the geometric horizon, Earth curve. No, that was debunked by the Black Swan over 18 months ago. But now the globe-believing zealots tell us that their horizon is refracted. It's not an actual horizon. So how do we have a tangent to a refracted horizon? When you're viewing a star on a globe, how are we measuring an angle to the horizon if it's refracted? You will never ever get an angle to a refracted horizon. This is a major problem if you think you live on a globe, because celestial navigation would be impossible. So what have you done to keep your religion of a sphere Earth semi-plausible? You've presupposed that that line, 90 degrees above your head, the zenith, actually runs to the center of your presupposed spherical Earth. And 90 degrees from that, you've made up a new horizon, the celestial horizon, which you say is a horizontal plane passing through the Earth's center, perpendicular to the zenith. So, after presupposing all these things, you can now use your sextant. But globe believers, realizing that their visual horizon is refracted, can't yet look at the horizon through the sextant. So yet another horizon is needed to be fabricated. They use the bubble level in the sextant to create the artificial horizon, which we are then told is
Isn't that ironic? They use the bubble level in the sextant, which of course would be the true horizon, or really, because it's just level, right? And call it the artificial horizon. But I suppose since the horizon really is always apparent anyway, maybe artificial isn't bad. I just find it ironic, that they use that description for it. But, the horizon is the apparent position where the sky meets the earth or the water or whatever. And that's what it's always been, unless you're a glober. If you're a glober, then it has to be a geometric horizon where mathematically the math dictates that it must be. And if it isn't, which it isn't, then the Earth's not a ball. So let's continue.
Parallel to the celestial horizon, essentially taking away the curvature of the Earth. Because even globe believers know you cannot measure an angle to a curved surface you think's beneath your feet. Look at this. You're pretending you're living on a globe, but in order to measure angles, you need to pretend you're living on a flat plane. This is cognitive dissonance, globers. You can't have it both ways. So now they can actually start and take a measurement from their 0 point of the artificial horizon to the celestial body. Look at what the globe believers are doing. They must treat what they see as flat in order to achieve an angle. But there's one more step, and this is where it all falls apart for the globe. They then have to measure from the artificial horizon a dip angle down to the visual horizon, the only actual horizon that we have. Remember that horizon that you said was Earth curve that is now refracted? Do you all realize now how devastating the Black Swan actually is to the globe? It has taken away your R value, the radius of your globe, and then it took away the curvature of the Earth altogether when it forced you to say that the horizon was refracted. And together with the sextant, it's now taken away your ability to navigate. Since January 1, 2020, the globe has been dead. So now it's time to prove where we actually live. May I present to you the number 1 flat Earth proof. Here in reality, we live on a flat plane. And this may be news to people we also have a flat sky plane above us where the celestial bodies exist. From the vantage point of our flat plane, when viewing the celestial bodies, we perceive their position and movement as a dome. This is purely our perception from.
Now, before we move forward, I want to point something out to you guys. If you remember, several months ago, maybe a couple years ago, I did a show in response to the Globers challenge for us to debunk the equatorial mount telescope, right? And it was really simple because, again, what the Globers never take into consideration is the personal point of view perspective, right? To them, it's always a side-on perspective or, something else that, it's not the way that we see things. It's not the actual point of view perspective of the observer. And so what they say then is they say, well, if they want that EQ mount, the reason that the EQ mount works on a globe and doesn't work on a flat Earth is because they can set it here and go right down the curvature of the Earth, right? And calibrate it to like Polaris. And then they can actually track the stars going up and over, right? And so what they're saying, what they're substituting is they're substituting that personal atmospheric dome for Earth curvature, right? For their supposed Earth curvature. That's what they're claiming. But obviously, if we know that we have the personal atmospheric dome, which would be on top of Earth curvature, then it would never work. The EQ mount could never work. Now they're doing essentially the exact same thing with a little bit of mathematics and sleight of hand in their analysis or their description of how the sextant works, right? So I just wanted to point that out. So the same old trick, they never, ever, ever take the personal point of view into consideration. And that is a fatal mistake because we see things in that way. Cameras see things in that way. Television camera, everything sees that way. And there's no other way to put it. So let's continue.
This vantage point on our flat plane, it's not actually a dome above the Earth. All celestial bodies rise in the east, move in an apparent semicircular motion above the sky, and set in the west. Now don't get me wrong, our Earth is measurably, observably, and obviously contained. But it just doesn't have to be a dome shape, or any shape for that matter. But I digress. Looking at this flat celestial plane above our heads, we can see that everything rises in the east, moves across the sky, and sets in the west. We just perceive a motion of a dome shape. So let me give you a real-world example of how this works. This is Lake Woolloomboola, quite fittingly the breeding ground to black swans, and, I kid you not, located on Black Swan Way.
Love it.
Now, relative to the horizon, if you look up, straight up above your head, 90 degrees, to where my drone is sitting, right there, 90 degrees, what will happen when that drone moves straight ahead in its own flat plane? It's not going to change altitude, it's just going to move straight ahead. From my observer point, what's going to happen? The angle is going to change. The drone has not changed attitude at all. It's just changed the distance from where I'm observing it. If it moves again, the angle changes again down to 25 degrees there. As it continues to move away, or if I move away from it, it'll travel towards the horizon, lowering in its angle, and eventually it'll get so far away that the angle will be too small for me to see, and it will appear as if the drone has set. This is all relative to the observer point. This is all apparent. It's not actually lowering. It's just getting too far away and the angle is decreasing. This creates that dome motion and movement that we see in the flat plane of the celestial bodies. Now that we understand that the flat celestial plane above us presents itself as a dome to our perspective point down here on the plane that we exist, we can understand how the celestial navigation actually works. Every star in the flat celestial plane has a position relative to our flat plane where it will be 90 degrees. This is called the geographical position, or the GP, of that star relative to our flat plane here on Earth. When the observer is at the GP of the star, it appears 90 degrees above their head. Celestial navigation works by using a sextant to measure the angle of that known star and using its relative GP, geographical position, to know where you are. And I'll continue to point out that measuring angles to celestial bodies only works if we are on a flat plane. Now, if one observer measures 30 degrees to a star and another observer measures 30 degrees to that same star, we can conclude that they are both on what's called a circle of equal altitude. And this is another killer blow to the globe right here. Everything on that circle of equal altitude is exactly that, equal altitude. No matter where you are on that circle, you're going to measure 30 degrees. And through being able to measure an angle to that star relative to the horizon, everything on that circle, in between that circle, in the area of that circle, is absolutely flat and level. By doing this once with a sextant, you know you are somewhere on that circle of equal altitude. To triangulate your actual position, you need to repeat these steps with other stars. Your position is where all these areas of equal altitude meet. This is how celestial navigation works and has always worked on our flat level plane, using the celestial flat level plane. Let's use this small scale example on Lake Woolloomboola. Instead of a drone, we're going to use a star. So if observer A measures an angle to the star, and observer B measures an angle to the star, the same star, both angles are the same, 30 degrees. Knowing the GP of that star, they can conclude that they are on the same circle of equal altitude. Distance between observer A and B and the area inside that circle is all in the circle of equal altitude. It is all flat. It is all the same level. This is the killer blow to the globe. Not only is our world observably and obviously flat, it is measurably flat, as I'm about to show you in this next large-scale example. The rule of thumb with celestial navigation is to use stars over 15 degrees in elevation, because under 15 degrees we start getting a lot of refraction, as you can see in these moon images. And this is real refraction, where something moves relative to the horizon, not the actual horizon itself being refracted, as anti-flat earthers would like to tell us after seeing the black swan images. So, if an observer was looking at Polaris from 15 degrees latitude, negative 60 degrees longitude, here near Dominica, they would measure 15 degrees to Polaris. And if another observer was on 15 degrees north latitude and 120 degrees longitude, they would also observe an angle to Polaris of 15 degrees, because we know the distance between these 2 points are absolutely flat on the same circle of altitude. We can measure between them and we get 10,375 miles of flat earth and ocean. And that's being nice to the globe. We can definitely see Polaris on the equator and even sometimes below the equator, which is a much larger distance of flat area, earth, and see. Let's do this north to south now. If someone...
So, what's really interesting about that is this, obviously it works perfectly. And you can check all this. We have all these sailing tools that we can do this with. We have ephemerises to show us all these positions. So you can literally, you don't even have to go out and necessarily observe the stars to verify this. You could actually do it with an ephemeris. But it's just interesting because we know that where they have greatly exaggerated the distortion in their conversion from the globe Earth to the flat Earth is in the southern hemisphere, right? Because that is the one area that, there has to be considerably more of it, and they have to do something with it. And that's why you have land masses that are distorted and all this. So it'd be interesting to really get somebody to go down there and start doing these triangulation measurements, even though, like I said, you could do this sitting at your computer most likely, but it would just be a lot of fun to actually be out there doing it. But are you guys following along with this so far?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's damn good, isn't it?
I could listen to Australian people speak all day, like for real. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I like Mitchell. He's got a great voice. He used to do a podcast with Paul on the Plane, and I liked his voice back then. It was pretty funny. He was the guy, I don't know if you guys remember, but what was it, when David was doing his podcasts, there was a guy that called in. You remember that guy and said, "I love you, David," and he's telling him how much he loves him and don't leave me for that guy and all that stuff. I mean, he was absolutely hilarious. That was Mitchell from Australia.
David Weiss.
Yeah, David Weiss. I mean,
okay.
Absolutely classic. This guy was so funny. He just had me in stitches. But anyway, all right, let's continue on. We only have a couple more minutes left.
Someone was at negative 75 latitude, looking at a star with a GP on the equator, we would be on the same area of equal altitude as someone looking at the same star from 75 degrees latitude. Knowing that between these 2 points has to be absolutely flat, let's measure between them. 10,375 miles again, with an area of 84.5 million miles. Absolutely measurably flat. But it doesn't stop there. Look at this map with all the GPs of the navigational stars on them. And the reason why this is the #1 flat Earth proof is because using just one area of equal altitude proves that that large area that we're navigating on is absolutely flat. But by doing this multiple times to create multiple areas of equal altitude, we can literally measure our entire world as flat. Just so you understand the enormity of this proof, we can literally measure our entire world as flat. We are living on a flat Earth. 2020 was the year of the Black Swan. 2021 is the year of the Sextant. There is no more debate. The globe has been killed. The flat Earth has been proven. This is the #1 flat Earth proof.
Wow.